to Lynnwood Election Watch 2013. I'm Teresa Wippel, and I'm the publisher of Lynnwood Today, and we are pleased to present this series of interviews of council candidates and mayoral candidates prior to the primary election and the general election, depending on when you're watching this. So tonight we have an interview with Mr. Christopher Boyer, who was appointed in December 2012 to fill position 1 and is running now for election to that seat. So welcome tonight, and please, I would love first for you to just tell people a little bit more about you and what you're about.
Okay, thanks very much for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it. I've lived in Lynnwood for 8+ years now. We moved to Lynnwood when I was offered the pastorate at Good Shepherd Baptist Church. And before that, I had been a nonprofit administrator, COO, CEO for, oh golly, almost 25 years, in management for almost 30. And the church called me because in addition to being able to preach and do those kinds of things, I did have a seminary education, they were looking to build a 40-unit complex of housing for senior citizens on very low income. And they were going to use part of the church property to do this. And they wanted somebody with nonprofit management experience to come in and kind of run that project. And we were able to do it successfully, even though the church is very small. When I came, I think we were averaging 35 in attendance on Sunday morning, and now we're about 50. But even though the church was very small, because we had donated the land, which was worth about $2 million, and then we stood as sponsors along with American Baptist Homes of the West to grant applications to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development and the State Affordable Housing Trust Fund and Snohomish County Affordable Housing Trust. We were able to get all those grants and build this really beautiful 40-unit complex. And I would invite anybody who's interested in it to come and see it. We're proud to show it off.
Where is it located?
It's located right next to the church. The address is 6927 196th Southwest in Lynnwood. Sits right next to the church. It's called Shepherd's Garden. And it's really beautiful. And we're proud to be able to provide safe, decent, attractive housing to about 50 senior citizens who are living on their Social Security income or even smaller pensions. They might otherwise be in really substandard housing or forced to live with relatives or maybe even under a bridge. But instead they've got a great place to live, and we're excited about that.
Yeah. And was part of your reason for being interested in being on the city council that experience of working with those folks?
It was indeed. Building that building was not without objectors. We had some folks in the neighborhood who thought it was going to bring down their property values and that we were going to have a bunch of ne'er-do-wells in there who were going to cause trouble. So we ended up in front of Lynnwood City Council many, many times. I also, because of my background as a nonprofit manager, primarily in the arts, I ended up joining the Lynnwood Arts Commission and then being appointed president or chairman of the Lynnwood Arts Commission. So I was also in front of the city council many times with that. And I watched with great fascination the work that they had to do. And I thought to myself, as I saw them going back and forth over several issues, I could help them with this. My reputation in nonprofit was as a manager who could come in and solve problems. There were 3 or 4 organizations. When I became chief operator or chief executive officer, they were in danger of folding because of financial problems. And I got all of them turned around and healthy. And so that was my reputation in the biz. And I thought, I could help this city council. There was also in those days a great deal of friction on the Lynnwood City Council. And I thought, these folks need somebody who's good at forming consensus, somebody who's good at helping people work together. And again, that's been one of the hallmarks of my career. So
Do you think they treat you differently because you're a pastor? Like they're nicer
Oh,
to
no,
you?
no. No, they're just as tough on me as they are on the rest of each other. But it's great. There really is actually, it seems to me, a new spirit on the Lynnwood City Council, a much more cooperative approach. And I think we're going to get some good work done together. It's exciting.
Good, that's great. Well, you know, your discussion about your experience really is a nice segue into another question I had, which is that a city report that I came across indicated that, you know, Lynnwood, I can say that word, Lynnwood's median household income is approximately $18,000 less than Snohomish County as a whole.
Yes.
And, you know, there are also, of course, a growing number of, you know, older folks, minority population, that kind of thing, low-income folks. So how do you, you know, obviously you've done it with your organization and, you know, developed some housing, but how do you address that issue in the city as a whole? Or does the council have some plans? Do you personally have some plans for that?
The answer to both those questions is yes. We had a planning retreat in January to set goals for the city council, just the council members, and of course public were invited and a few folks showed up, but it was really about us talking to each other about what did we want to accomplish in the coming year. And something that I pushed very hard for, and a couple of other council members joined me, was the idea that the city really needed to address affordable housing and really needed to address issues of homelessness. We've got a lot of homeless folks in Lynnwood. As a pastor, I see them all the time because, you know, they began, these various and sundry folks, by coming to the church asking for help, and we are glad to help as we can, although again we're a small congregation. But I quickly discovered that these homeless men and women, more than anything else, more than they wanted, you know, the $10 Albertsons grocery cards that we can give, they wanted somebody who would sit down and talk to them and listen to them. And I've really become convicted that these are citizens, just like anybody else. It's just that because of their circumstances, they're living outdoors or couch surfing or somehow getting by. And they need the attention and care of the city just as any other citizen in dire straits would need. So we're continuing to work out plans with the cold weather shelter, the emergency cold weather shelter, which my church has been a part of since the beginning. I've also asked and have gotten good response from my fellow council members and the community development department that Lynnwood take the next step and form an affordable housing policy. We've already had some questions about affordable housing come up in conjunction with some of the construction that's going around town. And we don't have any policy in place right now to answer those questions. So that's the first thing we've got to do is make some policy decisions about affordable housing.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Shifting gears a little bit, one of the things, of course, that I think has been several issues here visible to people in Lynnwood, but the issue of the Link Light Rail coming into to Lynnwood, and that's going to bring a lot of changes to the city, and I'm sure the council has been thinking about how to best help citizens deal with some of those things, including the fact that my understanding is that the council did vote to oppose the siting of the operations and maintenance facility.
That is correct.
So what are the next steps for that in terms of working with Sound Transit on some of those issues?
Well, the very next steps, and I'm not sure when you're going to start showing this, but coming up this weekend is going to be the first of a couple of city-sponsored forums where citizens can come and talk directly to Sound Transit and to city officials to let Sound Transit and the city know how they feel about Sound Transit's plans. You know, that the siting we know is going to put the station somewhere in the current park and ride over there off 200th. The question is, where do the tracks leave the I-5 right-of-way and come into the properties that abut it to the west? and where does it curve, and does it come in at the south end of the park and ride, in the middle of the park and ride, at the north end of the park and ride? All of those things have repercussions on people's property, on businesses, on apartments and condominiums, and they also have repercussions on property beyond the station, because the train has to either deadhead and have a turnaround space or proceed up to Everett, and that depends on the ST3 vote that will be coming up in the future. But we have to make plans that will work either way, and we have to be serious about figuring out who is being impacted with each of these scenarios. The maintenance facility we think is a bad idea on a lot of levels. It just doesn't make sense to have it in Lynnwood if in fact ST3 is passed and light rail continues up to Everett. The maintenance facility really ought to be up there. There's also a much better case to put it in Bellevue. Also, what Sound Transit wants to do is take property that belongs to the Edmonds School District, where the school district has long planned to build their new bus barn and headquarters building, and the school district doesn't like that idea very much.
Oh, I bet not.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where it would be, in where the buses are being stored right now, that area?
It would be in the area of the old Scriber Lake High School.
Oh, okay, exactly, right, yeah. Oh, well, I understand that. Well, here's another hot button issue for you.
Okay.
Red light cameras.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, I know this is something that keeps coming up, and kind of curious to know, you know, kind of as a council member, if you've gauged what the citizen feeling is these days about red light cameras and kind of what the future might hold for them in Lynnwood. I know that the issue seems to come up from time to time.
It does indeed. And, you know, I remember I was hanging around city council for all those different meetings when the red light cameras were first installed. And the council was very serious at that time about the fact that the revenue that they generate is incidental. It's really a safety consideration. And I know those men and women who made that decision, and I believe what they said. They were really looking out for safety. And the safety impact has been terrific. I mean, people running red lights and people being hurt because red lights are being run has dropped. Okay, and that, I think, is ultimately the important thing. Are we saving lives? You know, are we protecting people? And as far as community reaction, it seems to me from just talking to my neighbors and talking to people I run into that most folks have gotten used to the red light cameras. They don't find them to be intrusive. They do see the positive effects on safety. And the folks who are kicking up a storm are the folks who've gotten caught multiple times, or there is a little cadre of folks who are sort of professionally dedicated to getting rid of red light cameras all over Washington State, and they travel from town to town and they write letters and they send emails. But you know, after a while, you start saying, "Gee, these aren't even people who are living here and being impacted. So let's talk to our citizens and see what they think." And I think the majority of Lynnwood citizens see the safety issue.
Yeah, okay. It was interesting because I think I was having a conversation with somebody last weekend who does not live in Lynnwood, but he said, you know, I don't even go to Lynnwood because I don't want to deal with those red light cameras. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting.
Well, and the answer to not dealing with the red light cameras is don't run a red light.
Right. Right. You know, something that I've heard a few people talk about in Lynnwood is the small business climate and whether it is welcoming to businesses locating into town. And I've heard some folks say that they've talked with business owners who think maybe it's not so welcoming, and I'm wondering what your impression has been of that.
You know, that's interesting. A couple of other council members and myself got together with some business developers a few months ago and heard them out. You know, they mostly needed to get stuff off their chest. And then we had some conversations subsequently with the director of community development, Paul Krause, really sterling guy, and said to him, you know, "Paul, what do you think about this?" And he said, "Well, it's never our intention to have a bad climate for business development. So let's see if we can get to the bottom of this and figure out what can be done. And just today, I was reviewing a packet of materials that are going to go through, to begin with, the fire and building codes and start making them easier to understand, so that business developers can look at the codes and follow them and not have to have them interpreted a great deal. So that first of all, they know what the rules are, because that was one of the complaints we were hearing, was that folks didn't know what the rules were, and they seemed to be different in Lynnwood than anywhere else. So first step, let's make sure our communication is good, that those questions get eliminated, and people feel that they can come into the process knowing what's going on. And we're hoping that's a good first step, and then we'll see where we take it from there.
Well, that's good. And so that seems like a really good first step. And then are there any other specific measures that the council might be taking to economic development wise to actually go out and recruit businesses to locate?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And we also have a very fine director of economic development in David Kleitch. I think David's doing a terrific job and has, through a pretty difficult recession, of continuing to attract businesses to Lynnwood. And I think as the recession continues to ease, as the economic forecast continues to brighten, we're going to see Lynnwood business development picking up even more. We're going to see all of those empty storefronts filling up. I think the future for Lynnwood is very, very bright.
Let's talk a little bit about the state auditor's office finding related to the golf course and the financial reporting. Where are we with that, and what are the next steps? I think I'd heard something about a consultant being hired.
That's correct, and in fact, we get our first report from that consultant on Wednesday night of this week. The golf course is one of those things that council wants to preserve as an amenity in Lynnwood, if at all possible. But we also believe, most of us, that it really shouldn't be drawing funds in an ongoing way from the general fund. This is not something the taxpayers should have to continue to pay for. This is something that the folks who want to play golf should pay for. And so we have agreed to loan the golf course some money, about $1.2 million, in order to get their books to zero, get the budget balanced, and help them to move forward in an ongoing way. General fund is paying for the consultant, and it's not very much. I can't remember the exact figure. And we're gonna invest in the golf course so that it becomes a healthy business. But then we expect the general fund's investment to be repaid by a healthy golf course, and for the golf course to then continue on into the future, making its own way. It was set up as an enterprise fund when the golf course was founded for this very reason. So it's not drawing on tax revenues, it's creating its own revenue, and that's the way we think it should be.
And certainly there has been a fair amount reported on about golf courses generally are not doing well. It's a challenge for folks. I know in Mount Lake Terrace they just closed down their golf course, and I'm sure that's something that's going to be an ongoing source of discussion for folks.
Oh yes, and we are fully aware of all of the statistics that show golf declining. However, we think there are two things that have led us to make the decision to try a little bit longer. One of those things is that the golf course is beautiful and much loved, and we really do believe it's an asset to the city. Another thing is that we've got a director of Parks and Rec who has extensive experience in golf course business in Lynn Sordell. And Lynn is convinced that with the right partners in that business, that we can make a go of it and make it be the kind of business we need it to be. So we're inclined to give Mr. Sordell the opportunity to make that happen.
Okay. You know, something that I have often thought about, and I've asked people this question over time, is when you think about Lynnwood, what do you think the identity is of the city, and how would you even define maybe the city core, the place that Lynnwood folks gather? Do you have a good answer to that question? Because everybody I talk to has a different answer.
Well, in terms of identity, I think the identity of Lynnwood is changing. We are at the hub in terms of South Snohomish County and transportation. Where 5 and 405 meet, and 99 and 524, automotive transportation kind of revolves around Lynnwood in South Snohomish County. With the light rail coming in, that's going to be even more the case. And then we have all of this wonderful retail base, Alderwood Mall, the car dealerships. So we have people coming in and out of Lynnwood all the time for entertainment, for business, shopping, and we've got a wonderful housing base here too, both single family and multifamily dwellings. And because of that sort of South Snohomish County hub nature, we're attracting this wonderful cosmopolitan mix of people. Folks from Asian countries and Hispanic folk and Euro-Americans and black folk. We've got this wonderful melting pot going on that's really exciting. But you're right, there's no one place right now where people meet. And so the city council continues to talk and hope and plan for the day when the recession eases enough that we'll be able to go back to developing the city center as planned, there between, 44th and 52nd, south of 196th. That's going to be a wonderful development when the recession lifts enough that we can get it up off the ground.
Okay. And I would imagine as a hub, as you say, and with the sound transit and the other things that are coming along, that will, in theory, attract some more development. Because of the nature of that. Absolutely.
And we're looking towards mixed use. We're looking for some civic use in that area. Possibly, a new justice center, possibly a new city hall, possibly even a new library, but lots of retail and restaurants and business offices and residential above that with the right height kind of structures could have wonderful views of both the Olympics and the Cascades or Mount Rainier. It could be a really exciting place to live and work and play. We're very hopeful about that.
Okay. Now, if you were going to, in a word or several, say, actually, I think several words probably would be required for this one. The greatest accomplishment in the city of Lynnwood in the last 5 years, what would you point to?
Wow. That's a question that nobody has asked me before. That's really interesting. I think it really comes in the way that Lynnwood has weathered the recession without gutting city services, and that's nice for the government, but the people in Lynnwood, it seems to me, have weathered the recession by not giving up hope, by continuing to be friendly to their neighbors, by continuing to show faith in the city, by hanging in there and doing what they can do, by shopping locally and encouraging local businesses. I feel like Lynnwood is a hopeful place, and that, given how the last 5 years have beaten on people economically, I think that's a pretty important accomplishment.
And of course, all governments are facing their challenges in
Oh,
terms
yes.
of the, what's going to happen with the next few years with, property tax decreases and state legislative questions about
Oh,
what
yeah.
can and can't be funded. And I'm sure there are things that you as a city will have to be making some tough choices about. What do you think is the biggest challenge ahead for the city?
Well, we need to be able to start replenishing city positions that were cut at the height of the recession. Some very difficult choices had to be made during that time, and those choices were made by my predecessors and the mayor. But now it's time to start rebuilding. We've got to do some rebuilding in fire and police departments, for example. We've also got to start making some choices along with the citizens about how we're going to fund certain operations of the city into the future to keep them running appropriately. For example, we're looking right now at what water and sewer and groundwater rates are going to be doing for the next 8 years or so. And I was sort of appalled to discover when we began the discussion that this gets kind of technical, but the fund to rebuild the sewer system has actually only been funded at 50%, which means we keep borrowing from the future as we try to rebuild the sewer system, and you can't do that forever. We're also about 7 years behind in the city's repaving or refurbishing of streets plan, and you can't do that forever either. I mean, sooner or later the bill comes due. So the city council is going to have to work very carefully along with city staff to figure out good solutions for those problems. And then we're going to need to take them to the people, to the citizenry of Lynnwood and say, here's what we have figured and here's why. Is this something that you can support?
Right.
We want to tell you why we're asking you for more money on your water bill, your sewer bill. We need to tell you why we're going to ask you for more money in transportation costs. You need to know that, citizens of Lynnwood, but you also need to know that if we don't ask you for this extra money, we don't have any way to continue to pave the streets and make the sewers work.
And that is another common dilemma facing many cities. And we're almost out of time. We have about a little less than a minute left. So
Okay.
could you please do me a favor and let
Sure.
folks know, in 15 seconds or so, kind of what you're hoping that they will remember about you when they get their ballot in the mail, and also a website.
Good. I'm hoping that folks will remember that although I'm brand new on city council, I'm bringing almost 30 years of management experience. I'm used to in nonprofits stretching nickels to the nth degree. But people can learn more about me and my campaign at www.boyer4, the numeral, Lynnwood.com, or on Facebook.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Beep, beep,
Appreciate
beep.
it. And we were just right out of time, so
Okay.
thank you.